All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I will be reviewing Sacrament by Clive Barker. This book came out in 1996. So it's been around a bit of time. Let's talk about the cover first. You know, I love graphic design and cover illustration. This looks like it's got it's a decent cover, I guess. You know, it's got a little stone icon of what looks like a fox head with glowing eyes. Backside is cool. It's a decent looking book overall. I give it a good shot. So this book, what is it about? You know, I remember kind of reading this back in 96 when it first came out, not remembering too much about it and not being left with being really overawed by it. So I was interested to see what I would think about it again. So this book, it's kind of like, it's not really a horror novel like a Stephen King or even like any of Clive Barker's other books. It's more of like a literary John Irving-esque work of fiction rather than like Stephen King-esque. It's about it's kind of told as stories within stories. Some of the themes are about being human, being gay. You know, it's kind of about a world full of decay and death, and if every human on the planet was gay, well, would that be the end of humanity? Would that be the extinction of our species? There's monsters in this book. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's monsters in this book that kill for fun. There's like the AIDS crisis. This takes place in kind of like in the AIDS scare. It's a complex book full of grandiose ideas, filled with a lot of different flashbacks. Like I said, the impact of AIDS on our main character's life, and also just the world in general. It's got blind polar bears. It's got fox lords. It's a quest novel unlike any other. It's about a guy's journey into his past as he tries to save the planet and every creature on it. It's got a lot of stuff going on. But let's just start from the beginning. Those are the kind of the overarching themes. But let's start from the beginning. Will Rabjohns, he's a nature photographer. And it starts out when he's an adult. He's in the Hudson Bay, a town called Balthazar, about 31 people. And Clive Barker does a great job of just describing this bleak, wind-swept landscape way up in the north where the polar bears live. And that's why Will is up there. He's up there to photograph nature, specifically polar bears. And it starts out while he's visiting this old hermit named Guthrie. And Will encounters, while he's out with this hermit, he encounters the most magnificent large polar bear that he's ever seen. And he's just amazed by it. And he tries to convince his two friends, Adriana and another guy. He wants his friends to come back out with him to this hermit's place to find the bear again. And they're just kind of like, you know, we're taking too many risks with these bears. But overall, I just enjoyed the scenes of them actually going back out to look for the bears. And they specifically go to kind of like junkyards and landfills and car dump areas where the bears sort of scavenge for food. And Clive Barker does a beautiful job of describing how these bears are rooting around in this garbage, this bleak landscape, and how these photographers are really trying to get just the best photographs of these bears. And just because I'm trying to make a statement about nature, man's intrusion onto nature, and how nature is dealing with it. Well, Will Rabjohns is mauled by a bear eventually. I mean, you knew it was coming. It was coming. He had to. It was kind of like, reminded me of that scene in Revenant where Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't think it's Leonardo DiCaprio. I think it's Leonardo DiCaprio is playing the mountain man Hugh Glass, and a bear mauls him almost to death. It's kind of what happens in this book, and it happens pretty early on. And so we get that, and then the guy is in a coma. So Will is in a coma. So as an adult, he's a nature photographer, gets mauled by the polar bear eventually, and now he's in a coma. And then the rest of the story, just is him in this coma as he's reliving central childhood. He's a kind of an eccentric child, and he's reliving these childhood memories. And in these memories, this is when we start to kind of flash back from the 90s to the 80s and the AIDS epidemic and how he was dealing with it. And then there's also a lot of supernatural stuff in these flashbacks. He's confronting his own dark past while at the same time waging a war, like I said, not just for his own soul, but for every creature on the planet. As he fights this ancient and terrible force that in the end kind of reveals the mysteries at the very heart of Mother Nature. And if he wakes from this coma, he's got to confront all of this. And so that's kind of the book in a nutshell. I read this as part of my spring paperback horror novel, like book to be read thing. And like I was going to read a whole bunch of paperback horror novels. And so I picked this one up. But it's not really a horror novel at all. It's not. It's literally like a John Irving-esque sort of literary piece of fiction. And I did quite like it. I enjoyed the journey for what it was. Not very action-packed, but makes you think a lot about humanity, humans' place on this planet, and how we interact with nature, and how deadly diseases interact with us, and how we might be a deadly disease to the planet, and all of that stuff. It's fine. I mean, I don't think he's really trying to push any sort of political agenda. I really didn't get that. I mean, I understand the push-pull between the global warming and how humans are wrecking the earth and how maybe we're not and all that, but he doesn't really come down on either side of it. But anyway, I was kind of like hoping for a horror novel, got something else. I still was kind of like, he's a pretty cool book and interesting and very well written, because Clive Barker is such a great writer. And I was just kind of thinking that about an 8 out of 10 maybe. I think the first time I read it, it probably would have been like a 5.5 out of 10. I think I appreciate it a little bit more as a more grown adult. But anyway, there we go.